Hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me. This is the Roaring 30s. Today, we will be talking about the notorious, the amazing, the over-sexualized, the pathway to life. Today, we're talking about the vagina, the vajayjay, the Susie, the tuntun, the Yoni. And we have one of my very good friends here with me. Her name is Samantha Demise, and she is a Yoni facilitator. She'll be talking to us about our vagina health and wellness, and she'll also be dispelling the myths about our vagina. Samantha, thank you so much for joining me today on the Roaring 30s.
Thank you for having me, Colette. I honor being here.
Yes, girl. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
So my name is Samantha Demise, also known as Empress Purples. I am the co-founder of Nas Wellness, and Nas means Nagasi Oasis Wellness. So pretty much what I do is I'm all about self-care, girl. People be like, "You want to go out?" And I'm like, "Can we turn this into like a self-care go out?"
Yes.
So with Nas Wellness, pretty much is I try to educate and show knowledge, whether it be with vaginal steaming, it would be with pearls, it'll be about the vagina, it'll be about the human body overall, and just how we can like just have more self-care routines and honor ourselves more. That's pretty much what I do.
Okay, nice. I can't wait to get into the questions. I just can't wait to talk to you. So I'm gonna continue with the podcast in regards to the Yoni, the vagina, which people have a hard time saying that word. It's like, you have to say that word. Can we say it like call it another name? No, we're gonna say vagina on this show, and if you don't like it, then I don't know. That's what we're talking about. So Samantha,
Yes, darling.
first question is, why is it so important to take care of the vagina?
All right. So consider it of utmost importance. In fact, caring for your yoni often means caring for your overall health. If you don't take care of your vagina and look after its many needs, it can lead to some pretty big health issues. Eating healthy and exercising is also a vital and a healthy vagina makes a healthy vagina.
Why is it so hard for women to talk to their doctors about vaginal health?
Um, I would say I think it's just a sensitive topic.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a sacred topic,
Mm-hmm.
and because a lot of women are taught to value it, but I think it's the way we were taught to value it. And in different cultures, obviously, there's different ways of valuing your vagina. But I think for the most part, it's sacred to the fact of it being shameful or embarrassing. It's kind of like when someone farts. People are kind of afraid to, as we used to call it, poop in public, right? And so it's like, no, if I fart, like you just have manners and respect and you say, excuse me, or if your belly is, not time too good, you head to the bathroom. You do it in an area where you can still release and still be you and still respect people around you. You know what I mean? So I think it's a sensitive topic where women's esteem may be low. Sometimes we're not comfortable with our bodies. We don't feel connected, heard, seen, or taken seriously by our physicians.
Yes, taken
I think
seriously.
the main thing is the physician part
Yes.
because we already don't innately, unfortunately, we are told and taught countless times and in various ways to suppress everything about us as a woman, to be honest with you. So for me to come out and be like, hey, Colette, the other day, like my vagina was itching me. What do you think it could be? We don't want those
Right.
kind of conversations.
Girl, please. We know you can't.
You get what I mean?
Especially, we can only speak to our own West Indian culture.
Exactly.
That promotes a clean and healthy, obviously, which is a good thing, a vagina, but there's a pride to it. So if you tell someone because you're worried or you want to know if they've experienced it, then you're afraid they're gonna pin it back on you and say, you're not clean, you don't take care of yourself, and blah 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 blah, and it becomes like a big thing. So I totally hear that. And to like the physician, I remember. Well, I didn't even know I was pregnant with my first son, and my My consistency was changing, and I was, oh my gosh, what's happening to me? So I went to the clinic, the walk-in clinic, and the doctor said, well, are you sexually active? And I was like, yes. And he was like, well, maybe you have an STI. I don't know. Here, take this swab. Well, actually, it wasn't even a male. It was a female. Take this swab, go in the bathroom, insert it into your vagina, put it back in the tube, and we'll test it. Maybe you have like gonorrhea or something like that.
So you are automatically judged as a woman of color.
100%, because where the walking clinic was, it was in an area where there was housing, and then there's like regular
area. Automatically there's a stigma.
And of course, color of my skin, right? So it's like, okay, obviously, majority of the young women that come in here must usually have STI. I'm just assuming, right? That's probably why she treated me that way, right? It turned out I was changing because I was pregnant, but I didn't know the signs of pregnancy. And she didn't ask me if I was pregnant. She just assumed that, something's wrong with you because you're promiscuous or something. So it scar you, and you don't even want to have that kind of conversation with another physician about your own vaginal health.
So I want to go into this. Let me see if I can find it real quick. So we talked about the importance of the vagina, right? So you asked me, well, why is it important? Sorry, you asked, why is it so important to take care of the yoni? So it is very important to take care of the vagina, as it's one of the paths through which infections can ascend up and reach the uterus, tubes, ovaries, and adjacent pelvic structures. Maintain personal hygiene and take plenty of fluids. Wash your yoni with normal tap water-based mild soap. Avoid using vaginal douches and creams, says OBGYN Dr. Neha Singh Rathod. So a normal pH balance is between 3.8 and 4.5. I've learned with my own history and going through pretty much typically what you had gone through, with not knowing that you were pregnant, and just the automatic stigma of a woman of color in a marginalized area. It took me over like 15 years to be like, certain things just do not agree with my body. But if I didn't have PCOS and try to want to understand it more versus just going to the doctor, which I've done, and we'll get into that later. So again, it's like, it's a sacred area, and even though we feel like we cannot speak about it or we cannot ask questions about it, you're only hurting yourself. Because as you heard, and as the first thing the doctor asked you was, are you sexually active? Which is a typical question for them to ask no matter what. And if you are, then they'll be like, hey, we're going to do a pregnancy test. We're going to do this, right? But again, if we're not taking care of it, then we don't really, like, if we were taking care of it, then we really wouldn't have to feel as embarrassed to have the conversation with anybody. Because as we know, like, I'm a nudist. I walk around in my house, girl. My mom will be like, can you put on clothes? My husband will be like, I don't like to see you naked all the time, right? And I'm like, listen, let the body be free.
Listen.
You get what I mean? Because for me, like, a lot of people be like, oh, make sure you don't wear tight pants. Make sure you don't do this. Make sure it's always like, don't. But there's no explanation behind the don't. It's kind of like a kid where it's like, don't do this. And the kid's like, okay, I'm not going to do it. But why should I not be doing it? You get what I mean? Or why is it okay to do certain things?
Okay, and you touched on something about your mom your mom telling you to put on more clothes or not giving maybe a better explanation on things. My next question for you is, when is it a good age to talk to our little girls about taking care of their yoni?
So for me, I would say anytime. As long as you feel that they can understand how you're choosing to deliver the message is the main part. So you have a young daughter. She'll be starting school soon.
Yeah.
As we know, in Canada, sex ed is starting at grade 1 or something like that now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which basically is kindergarten, in other words, because
yeah,
3 to 8, it's pretty much all the same understanding. Different elevations of understanding, yes, but pretty much the same, right? So you know, when you start with potty training,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that would be the ultimate. You're your child's first teacher in anything.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
And if you choose not to be your child's first teacher, the world will become your child's first teacher in a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say it can go from like reading books. So we could read all the books and still feel as if we're failing. As we know, life is a journey made up of positive opportunities and unexpected experiences. So I just kind of wanted to touch on expanding their minds while they're young. And why I say expand their minds while they're young, especially when it comes to their vaginal health, so that they don't have to endure what we went through or what has happened in the past. This is why I've become an advocate for the young. Is because my grandmother, I would start with my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, then I would say that entire 4th generation was not knowledgeable about the vagina. We know what goes in it, kind of what comes out of it pertaining to, like, you know, our menstrual period, children, and, you know, residue, just our normal vaginal floral residue. But nothing more past that. When you go into school and they're teaching you about, hey, the vagina, like, okay, it's like when you're in school and if you're not interested in it, it's just a project to get a grade to move on. So it's not really registering with you. So I would say anytime works. I would say from potty training, to start off with what the vagina is. Just like we teach our children, nobody should be touching you down there.
Right.
Unless it's this person, that person, or however you teach your child that part of their sexuality, right? Then we go into, oh, make sure you don't have a boyfriend until you're 21. Make sure you don't have a boyfriend until you're 50.
And not actually teaching our daughters how to protect themselves and how to carry themselves and how to protect their vagina and understand when it's not well and understand when you're not eating well and all these things. And I agree with you 100% with that.
So definitely, a lot of it, so I just want to say that a lot of it comes from what you understood about your vagina.
Right.
When you're at each age, you're willing to teach your child.
Right.
But if you think about the questions that you have, they could possibly be some of the questions that she may have, right? So I think education is key at every level and at every age range that you choose to teach.
Right, I agree. And I was going to ask you how we can bring up these conversations, but you pretty much touched base on how we can bring up these conversations, right? So do you believe speaking about the yoni is shamed in the Black community, which I think we kind of touched on it a bit, but let's expand on it a bit.
I think pride and lack of open communication and knowledge plays a major role. People overall are embarrassed by the correct terms of body parts. Instead of vagina, we use cover words. In our community, we are taught to love our bodies, but in secret. If we're open and explore our sexuality, we're considered a fast little girl, when in actuality, we were just not knowledgeable and we are exploring. What isn't taught at home will be seek after in the world. So I kind of went on saying, like, you know, you are your child's first teacher. And like I said, with the 4 generations, because of the way we were taught and we were willing to continue that cycle of teaching, women of color overall are prone to a lot more things than women who are not of color. Let's just start off with that. And so the fact that, yes, we're shamed, it's all about pride. I just want to go a little bit personal. So my group of girls that I grew up with, I would say out of elementary wise, I'd say out of maybe the 10 to 15 of us, 9 of them had their periods before me. That was my first indication something was going on. But hey, you know, they tell you everybody grows at their own pace and does their own thing. I believe I didn't get my period till basically grade 8, the summer of grade 7, when everybody was having breasts and hips and basically they were flourishing into their puberty. Whereas I was still that little seed, like, you know, trying to sprout, but, you know, they used to call my breasts mosquito breasts. Like, I was still like, girl, this is why, like, everybody has body issues at different parts of their life. I always had a body issue, but my body issue wasn't shaming. It was, I want to be this. I want to be that.
Right.
So yeah, I would say it definitely is. If anything comes down to, when I had my period in grade 7, I was at church. Actually, it happened on Easter Sunday. And my belly was just out of nowhere. I felt nothing different. I was a very athletic kid. So we're sitting in service, and I was like, Mom, my head hurts. And she's like, okay, maybe make sure so you eat something before you got to church. Ate something, no problem, went to church. No, Mom, my belly hurts. Like, this feels like diarrhea. Like, when you give me washout, like, hurt.
Cramping. Mm-hmm.
Then the cramping started. So for me, everything happened within, like, a couple of hours. It's not like I had, like, you know, a headache a couple of days before, like, you know, whatever our PMS symptoms are. And my mom's like, how you decide to make your period come when you there?
You know what? You know what though, Samantha? Is it a way for her to express her shock?
Well, at the age of like 12 and 13, girl, that felt like shame. Okay. It did not feel like shock. And this is what I mean by when you're willing and ready to teach, think about what you were going through. So me giving you that example, and eventually when I was teaching my nieces and nephews, because unfortunately I do not have children at the moment, I started teaching my nephew about a pad the moment he took a pad and he stuck it on his forehead.
Yeah, because you know what? There isn't anything wrong with little boys learning about the women's anatomy. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's very human. It's very natural. And then women's anatomy does not need to be over-sexualized.
At all. But I feel like if we teach our young men at an early age of how to understand it, how to protect it, and how to respect it, maybe, and I think we do have a lot of those men in the world who kind of know more about us than we know about ourselves, especially when it comes to the vagina. You know what I mean? So if he's curious and he wants to know, and again, going back to school and sex ed, I feel like this is another one of the reasons. I'm not an advocate for it, I just understand it.
In terms of the Black community being shamed, I think it has a lot to do with culture and with
knowledge.
And the knowledge, and in a general term as well. I think we just don't learn about the vagina. We just don't.
It's unfortunate.
And it's associated with being fast. It's just associated to like sex. It's not taking pride in the fact that, you know, God willing, you'll be able to give birth to a child, or God willing, you know, even having a healthy reproductive system, or understanding the signs of maybe something is wrong. Maybe I need to go to the doctor. Maybe I should talk to my mom about it. So there is this shame, and I think it's only because there's the sex element attached to it, which it shouldn't be shamed for that either, but it is.
You know, when we're younger and we're listening to music, especially what our parents are listening to.
Yes.
You know how people say music changes over time? So we used to have rap, now we have trap. We used to have like conscious reggae, now we have like soul reggae. And we used to have what dancehall used to be and now trap dancehall. So when we're hearing artists sing about certain things, even in R&B, like I remember used to singing, let's talk about sex, baby, let's talk about. And then, you know, I'd come home singing about it, not knowing what sex was. I'm just singing the lyrics of a song. But then, like you said, I'm being disciplined for something that's not being understood.
Right. Oh, don't worry. The Fuji's ready or not, here I come. I was singing that one day in the house, and Mom was like, don't sing it. It's not appropriate. It's not for you. And I was like, oh, I know. And the thing is that these things are actually passed down to us, because if Gabriel sings a certain song, like, Gabriel, change it right now. Don't sing that song. It's not appropriate, you know? And I think it's because I don't know how to have that conversation with my son yet. And I don't know what appropriate language to use with him. So instead of educating him about why something is not appropriate, I just shut it down. And so
can I ask you a question?
How to have that?
So do you think shutting down helps him understand what you're trying to basically refrain from teaching him.
Right. It doesn't help him. And in my mind, I'm having a full-blown conversation. Like,
about how to talk to him about it.
yeah. Like one day he was like, Mom, I came from you, but like, how did I get in you to come from you? And I was like, it's a great question. Great observation, Gabriel. But I didn't answer. He was like, so you're not going to answer? I'm like, it's complicated. He's like, okay, so explain it. I'm like, it's not that complicated, but he goes, well, if it's not complicated, then Mommy, can you explain it? I'm like, not right now. You get older. Like, I to be honest, even I feel shy. So maybe it's a thing where our parents also feel shy about speaking about adult, I guess, situations and sexuality. Right. How to make this conversation more human with the child. So maybe the issue in the Black community is that we don't know how to have the conversation with our children.
And because culturally, adults are adults.
Children, yes.
And the children are over here. And if you think about a lot of family function, it's the same concept. Yeah. Family barbecues. Adults are over here, smoking, drinking, laughing, playing dominoes, playing all they do. The kids are over here, drinking, pretending to smoke in the corner so that, the parents don't see them. Right. And, we try to mimic what we see. And right. So, and advice as an ECE, because I'm also an early childhood educator by career, I just chose to change my path because, again, I'm passionate. And if I can have that as a background and understand, and I think for me, it's easier to keep asking you these questions to get you to think about how to give him an answer. So it's more like, you already know he's going to be inquisitive. And like you asked, when is the right time to teach your child about the vagina?
You know your child is intelligent, but then you didn't know how intelligent your child is. So you're like,
you keep that, you know what? You match their intelligence. And so the thing is, I don't want you to feel judged or to put shame on parents who feel like they can't have the conversation. What I encourage you to do instead is defer it for the moment, because if you feel like you honestly cannot give them an answer that they will understand or that you feel comfortable with, don't just sweep it under the rug, though. Because we know what mold does, and we know what dust mites and all those things do. You know what I mean? They create problems. And then going back to our community, all we're ever taught is, make sure so you don't come home pregnant. Get your education.
My mom didn't even have that conversation. Let me tell you a joke, and then we're going to move on, because this topic is such a huge topic. We might have to do like another,
definitely,
specifically about talking to children about this stuff. Listen, I got pregnant with my son when I was 25. Okay. All right. I just started. I was not very educated about sex, so I am very early and in my relationship, or soon my relationship, and to this day, I still haven't told my mom I'm pregnant with Gabriel. Gabriel's going to be 8 in July. I remember sitting at the table and I'm like, Mommy, I'm sorry. She's like, sorry for what? I got to talk to you about something. What? I said, Mommy, I'm sorry. She goes, Jesus Christ, don't tell me. And I'm telling you, it was even at 25, I couldn't say the word pregnant. And it was the first time I ever heard my mother say the word sex. She said, you're having sex? You're having protection? 25. So it's definitely a hard conversation to have, but it's not impossible. And it's about normalizing how human we are, to be honest. But we're going to have another segment on this for sure. So next issue is, we're not gonna even. I was gonna ask you, why is it important for us? Yeah, I should ask you, why is it especially important for women, especially Black women, to take interest in their vaginal health?
Statistics all over the world will show you that people of color, especially, and or immigrants, are taken less serious when it comes to their overall health in the healthcare system. This has been a huge issue. So in the article, I'm just going to read verbatim. It says, Racialized populations, in particular Black populations, are having the worst experiences in the healthcare system. Subjective and immeasurable symptoms are more likely to be ignored if they are exhibited by people of color and newcomers. Racialized populations, in particular Black populations, are having the worst experiences in the healthcare system. Says, and I'm going to just spell this person's name, but I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Massaqui, said their issues aren't being addressed fast enough, timely enough, appropriately enough, and therefore we're having more premature death and higher rates of illnesses that should be preventable. Reading into that article and knowing what I went through and what you went through and what a lot of us have gone through, it hurts. And the fact that we're seeking knowledge and we're still not getting that answer almost makes me feel kind of how me trying to speak to my mom. It's almost like me trying to speak to that physician who isn't willing to listen or who's just giving that automatic judgment, because majority of us are only screened for like what? Top 10 STIs.
Right.
And this is where I'm going to go into more personal information. So vaginal health is important because if you don't understand your body, you will not understand your changes. So going back to when, you didn't know what was going on with you. And because again, you weren't really understanding of your body in that moment.
Right.
To be like, okay, you know what? I'm having discharge. Let me Google it. People always say, don't go on Google. Google will tell you got cancer. Google will tell you to kill yourself. Google will tell you all these things. I'm sorry. It's called filtering Google and understanding what you're reading. And that's how I self-diagnosed myself with PCOS, to the point where I was telling doctors, this is what you need to test me on. It took me years to journal my symptoms, understand my symptoms, to even have this conversation. And this is another thing where Nas has derived from, where I want queens to know, like, hey, it's okay to talk about this stuff. It's okay to question it. And it's okay to rebuttal with your doctor. It's okay to advocate for yourself, because technically we go into the doctors for them to solve our problem because we don't know what's going on. Great. They have a license behind it. They understand it a little bit more. We go to them for help. But when you go to somebody for help and they turn you away, you're more likely not willing to go back again. Again, the shame, the embarrassment. So then what happens is you create a breeding ground and you become more susceptible to other infections because we thought that we were judged. A great place in Canada, we'll also send you the link for that. It's called Planned Parenthood. It took me about 10 years to be diagnosed with PCOS, and then another 4 years. Oh, sorry. So I'll get into that right after. Okay. So it took me 10 years to be diagnosed with PCOS, and about another 4.5 years. I won't even say 4.5 years. That was back when I would say 4.5 years. And I'm continuing to do research and understand my body, so I know what needs to go in there for me not to experience PCOS symptoms. So I talked about journaling. So going back to being racialized in the healthcare system. So the moment that you don't check off the boxes for particular symptoms, you can be misdiagnosed. When I was going through my trials with PCOS and the healthcare system, I honestly felt like a cancer patient, where the doctors did not know what was going on, because 10 years ago, PCOS wasn't as researched as it is now. HPV, bacterial vaginosis. I'm just throwing out the things that are more common now, of the things that you see on your shelves that we're quick to run to.
Right.
I was told that as a Black woman, I will always have bacterial vaginosis, and there's nothing I can do about it. Those were verbatim a practitioner's words to me.
Wow. Wow.
Colette, girl, when I cried in front of her for her to see how much she hurt me. Sorry, it's bringing tears to me right now. Like, I cried in front of this practitioner, and I looked at her, and this is what I mean, like, I got passionate. And I'm not going to swear here, but when I was talking to her, I think I cussed her in English, in French, and I can't speak French that great, mainly in patois, because she was also another woman of color. And I said to her, I think I just recall saying to her, like, how dare you tell me that there's a glass ceiling for bacterial vaginosis for women of color?
Mm.
That's exactly what I said to her.
Yeah.
And I said, for you to be a woman of color and not willing to understand this for your daughters, your aunts, your anybody, for women of color, you're doing us a disservice being even in this light, in this field, in this career. And she looked at me and she said, okay, our appointment is finished. I guess at that moment she felt threatened.
I guess she did.
And with being threatened, she was also embarrassed. She obviously internalized a lot of it. She understood where I was coming from, because the next time I saw that practitioner and I went in with the exact same symptoms, she actually tried to pawn me out to another practitioner for that day.
Wow.
And that practitioner was like, nope, I'm not taking any more clients. You got me yad. And I'm like, girl, I hear you becoming wantar. She is the one that I wanted.
Yes.
Why? Because I went back to her with evidence. I went back to her with research. I went back to her with journaling.
I've never heard of that before. I mean, I'm no doctor, but I've never heard of that before.
And so when we say that if you don't take care of your vaginal health, you can become susceptible to other infections, it is definitely true. Because I'll go in a little bit more again. With my bacterial vaginosis, chlamydia, and gonorrhea are the top common trichomonas, top common things that they will test for. Trichomonas, not as much, unless you continue to present chlamydia and gonorrhea symptoms and or positive tests.
Okay.
So I became more susceptible because, one, I wasn't eating healthy. I was still a young teenager, eating her McDonald's, eating like just my junk food. Just not taking care of my health. My metabolism it was fluctuating. My hormones were all over the place. Then I started to notice a lot of other things that led to my PCOS, because obviously I had a part in it as well. Genetics has a part in it, and also just your lifestyle. And some things are just not inevitable. It's just about managing, right? So I told you about Planned Parenthood. So I had a physician at Planned Parenthood. I don't remember her name, and she gave me hope. I got to a point where every time I tried to seek help from somebody, I eventually found the right person. And when they were willing to help me, something happened to where they were removed from my life. So this practitioner, I said to her, and this is after me years and years and years, going to my family doctor, him just not listening to me. Going to a woman of color, her not listening to me. Finally going to Planned Parenthood, dealing with a lot of different practitioners, because it's like a walk-in. But for the most part, if you want to see a particular practitioner, you can, just like any other walk-in. And so I said to her, I said, listen, I refuse to be tested for chlamydia, gonorrhea, and I refuse to be tested for bacterial vaginosis, because I've been giving these pills, which are causing worse symptoms for me. And she said, okay, Sam, I hear you. You know why she heard me? Because a year prior to that, I was still advocating. And it was her first time seeing me a year prior. Now, the second time she's seeing me, she understood how passionate I was about wanting that help. So she wasn't like, okay, I'll just give you all these tests and send you through the door. She eventually got to the point where she tested me for something called Mycoplasma genitalia. And pretty much what that is, it's an offspring of chlamydia, gonorrhea. So if you continue to test positive for it, you're most likely going to test positive for this particular STI. Okay. And so with that created a susceptible space in my womb. Okay. With that, she's like, hey, Sam, this is what's happening. I finally hear you. I'm gonna, even though we haven't done all the tests, I'm gonna send you to a fertility specialist. She's like, at this point, I'm going through all of your notes, because I was literally only going there so that somebody had proper track record of every time I complained about something. You know, it's kind of like postpartum depression and or anxiety, when people are showing you their symptoms, but nobody's believing it because they don't understand it. They don't know what it feels like.
Right. Or
And this,
you're experiencing it when you are.
exactly, or they think you're lying,
Yeah.
which again goes back to being racialized.
Mm.
People of color are expected to be strong because of all that we've endured. We are strong people, but we can also be sensitive people. We're allowed to cry. We're allowed to feel pain. We do have pain receptors. We feel pain. And a lot of people think we don't feel pain. Why? Because of what we went through? That
Right.
is pain. So for the fact that you think that we don't feel pain, that tells me something about your train of thought. So that wraps up question 6.
Okay. That is, I want to thank you for sharing and being so transparent about your story. Women in particular, we don't speak about our STIs or any kind of testing. Um, we just don't because of the shame that comes with it. So thank you so much for being transparent. I know other women may message you, inbox you, to ask you more questions or even just to be able to relate to you about that. So thank you so much, Samantha. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
For you is what I've been waiting for. I mean, like the whole conversation, but this part
We had to lead you guys up to it.
is about the steaming. Let's talk about the steaming, Samantha. Is it good as everyone claims? And if so, why is it important? And how often should we steam?
All right. So, what is good for some may be amazing to many others. This is not a new craze, but a historical gem that has come back to help guide us on the importance of vaginal health. So, Yoni steaming is basically like a facial for the vagina. Commonly, and I try not to promote it. Everybody has their own thing that they like to promote, they like to do, they like to advocate for. And I don't knock anything. I just try to shoot and gain for people to gain knowledge. As I told you, it took me years to research. This steam seat cost me like $3 US.
Okay.
We all know what conversion rate is like.
Yeah.
And shipping.
Yeah.
So, I spent a pretty penny,
Yes.
on my Yoni steam. But you know what? It's my chest. It's something that I love to do. Yoni steaming overall doesn't only just help with the physicalities of trying to heal and or combat certain symptoms. It's also physical and emotional. And when I say physical, because obviously it does its work, the different herbs that you utilize for different body constitution. So again, the question was how often should you steam? Depending on your body constitution, and when I say body constitution, it just means what is your PMS symptoms like, which is your premenstrual symptoms. What is your actual menstrual cycle like? So PMS and MC are two completely different things. Premenstrual symptoms is what we experience before our menstruation.
Yes.
So the tenderness of breast, the headaches, the irritation, the moodiness, basically everything that apparently makes a woman a woman. The cramping. So a lot of the things that we think are premenstrual symptoms and they are okay for us, they actually are not. A lot of us feel like, again, because of lack of knowledge, embarrassment, pride, and anything else that can fall under this umbrella, is we don't understand our body.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so when you think having super sore, tender breasts before your period is okay, it is not. I still suffer from stuff like that only because my periods are not regular. I have irregular periods, and I actually had missing periods for about 3 years, and that's when they actually started to take me a lot more serious when it came to my fertility journey. With that being said, I'm just gonna throw out a couple of things that help with Yoni steaming, and what are some of the things that people experience so that you understand what you should not be experiencing. So here we go. Can you identify with experiencing any of these symptoms? Painful periods, pain between periods, lower abdominal pain, lower back pain, infertility, menstrual irregularities, night sweats, mood changes, hot flashes, vaginal dryness, oily skin or acne, thinning hair and hair loss from the head, excessive hair growth, usually around the face, chest, back, and your butt. This basically kind of like explains everything that any woman can go through.
Yep.
And pretty much what I'm saying to you guys is it's not normal. We think it's normal because, again, when we actually have the courage to talk to our sisters and, you know, our sisters in universe and, you know, our adopted sisters, it's like, girl, I can't come out with you tonight. My belly's hurting me. And then another female who has PMS symptoms, you're like, I totally understand, girl. Drink your tea, have some, put a hot compress on. We try to soothe our symptoms, right? But instead of soothing our symptoms when they're ignite, why don't we try to do that prior to? So when our menstruation comes, it should only be typically for 4 days from beginning to end, which means from fresh blood to ending of your blood. Brown blood, dark blood, no blood is not good. Fresh blood is awesome. Ketchup blood, basically, like fresh ketchup, not your old stale ketchup packets. So you can steam anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, depending on your body constitution, depending on what symptoms you're experiencing as well. And this is where the customizable Yoni Steam comes into play. There are generic blends that you will see out there, like cleansing, detoxing, rejuvenating, tightening, all these stuff. It's because of the different herbs that they're using.
Okay.
So when you have somebody who is just selling, and again, I don't judge and I don't knock, but again, I try to teach knowledge. When you have somebody who's just selling one Yoni Steam to combat everything, you might help some of your symptoms, but then now you're bringing on other symptoms that you've never had. Right? So we were going to go into like my products and all of that stuff, right? I think when it comes to vaginal health, the most feared right now that's on the market is the Yoni Pearls.
Okay, what's that?
So in my Yoni Pearl package, it comes with a tampon applicator, but for right now, it's going to be used for your pearl. So I call it the pearl applicator.
Okay.
It'll come with 3 Yoni Pearls individually in their own package, sealed for freshness. So inside of the pearls, I wish I had one open. I think I actually have a video on my Nas Wellness page of back in 2017 when I started doing pearls more consecutively. So pretty much what it is, inside of this muslin cloth, which we all know can kind of be a little bit rough, is 14 different herbs compressed into a tiny ball and wrapped into a cloth. So when people are like, oh my gosh, it smells weird. Yeah, they're herbs, and we all know what milk tea smells like, chamomile, lavender. So think about that infusion.
Yeah.
Right? When you are secreting and your toxins are being removed, if you do choose to use the Yoni Pearls, you will smell the herbs. So the Yoni Pearl is kept in for 3 consecutive days. I usually tell people to start with 1 pearl for 24 hours, see how your body reacts to it. You might have a headache. You might have nausea. From people who have used my pearls, no one has had toxic syndrome, toxic womb syndrome, which most people associate with having a tampon in for too long.
Right.
Because they're all organic and wildly crafted herbs, you're going to feel the stinging, you're going to feel the pulling. So basically what it does is you push it inside the vagina, in the canal. It sits 7 centimeters up in there or as close to the cervix as possible. Going back into understanding your vagina, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know where your cervix is and when was the last time you felt your cervix?
It's a personal question.
Yes.
Why not? We're talking about the vagina, so why not? Okay, so last time I felt my cervix, I want to say I tried to in March.
Okay.
Because oh God, this is TMI, but I have a birth control in an IUD, and so the doctor said I should once a month try to feel the strings to make sure that it's in the right place.
Okay.
So the doctors always told me when I was like, if I felt like I was contracting or dilating, they would say like the cervix feels really hard, right? Like the tip of your nose. The tip of your nose.
Exactly.
So so that's what I went with when I tried to find it, but I was so nervous I was gonna pull out my IUD that I was like, I think I feel it. Okay, bye. I didn't find the string. I couldn't. I had a hard time, but anyway, again, TMI. But yeah, that was the last time I think I felt my cervix. I think that's what I felt, and it's not easy to get to.
It is not, and that is true.
And my cervix, I have a tilted cervix, so it makes it even worse. It's hard for me to find it.
It's actually very common in women of color, especially under the age of 30, for our cervix to become, I don't want to say deformed because it's not deformed, just not as normal as all the pictures portray when you Google this.
Right.
So another great thing of understanding, like, you know, where your cervix and stuff is the vaginal testing strip. So what this does is kind of like what the doctor gave you and said, hey, you think you have an STI. Instead of being embarrassed, I've also included this in the package. And what this does is you insert your Q-tip. I think in front of my face is better. So you insert your Q-tip in your vagina. You're going to collect, obviously, cervical secretion and or vaginal secretion. It comes with a cute little card. Comes with a cute little card. That kind of tells you like, hey, like, how embarrassed should you be with yourself? Put it that way, because we do feel embarrassed with ourselves and disappointed. So pretty much it tells you, it's called the color indicator. And so it gives you the results. If you're in the light yellow, you're pretty much, you're healthy, right?
Yeah, you're balanced.
If you're looking, I want to call it like burnt grass green into like luscious forest green, something is going on.
Okay.
So again, when I say journaling, understanding your body, this is where the kit comes in. A lot of people oppose of vaginal pearls. I've been using pearls for over 4.5 years. Not consecutively, because again, there's moments where, you know, things come up. I'm going on vacation and I want to do a cleanse, but I can't because I'm thinking about going on the beach and, you know, immersing myself in water and so forth. And again, for the full 3 days, you have to be drinking a lot of water. You got to stay away from the junk food and all of that greatness. And then it also comes with intimate wipes. Intimate wipes now are optional because I know a lot of women have their own wipes. But I know the vaginal testing kit, the applicator, and the pearl is a lot harder to find. So again, if you go onto my IG page for Nas Wellness, there's like a whole highlight on basically Yoni Pearls, what the herbs are kind of good for, who can use it, who shouldn't use it, when you should use it, and so forth. The next is, I have 2 different types of teas. They finally came in. So I have the fibroid tea.
Which, okay, girl, speak on it. You speak on it.
And then I got the womb, whoopsie, I got the womb tea. They just don't all have their labels on them right now. It just came in yesterday. So, like I said, when people will be like, oh, I can't drink 3 liters of water while I'm doing your pearls, Sam. Actually you can. You just need to cut out the juice, cut out the pop. Your smoothie is considered water because it has a whole bunch of fruits in it, and you use water the majority of the time. You have your tea in the morning, you have your tea in the evening, you have your water at lunch, and you drink throughout the day. It's called the water fasting. We eat a lot more than we should be eating.
Right.
And we are eating a lot of the wrong things that we should not be eating that contribute to a lot of the symptoms that we're having. So when we're having certain type of itching, burning, constant urination, something is going on. It is not normal.
Right.
So you wanted to say something about the fibroid tea, I'm assuming?
Yes, because statistically, a lot of Black women suffer from fibroids. So I wanted to learn more about it.
Alrighty, so fibroids, for most, or if you don't know, fibroids are abnormal growth that develop in or on a woman's uterus. Sometimes these tumors become quite large and cause severe abdominal pain and heavy periods. Personal experience. 2 different family members of mine both suffered from fibroids. And why I say suffered is because they weren't knowledgeable. And it came to the last resort and or the most invasive approach, which is hysterectomy, removing of the womb. If, like I said, if we can combat symptoms prior to them being super intense,
Right.
we don't have to resort to that. So when I showed you guys the Yoni Pearls first, the Yoni Pearls is like a hysterectomy. It's kind of how I'd like to put it, because you see more coming out of you. And if you see, you can always just literally just YouTube or Google Yoni Pearls secretion or just Yoni Pearls and just look at the graphics. You will see people's tumors coming out. I've had one client where the tumor that she showed me, she asked me not to post. A lot of my women are still embarrassed, self-conscious, and
Wow.
or just don't want to be exposed, because some of them have posted like, hey, I got my pearl. And then, you know, some people just pass. They'll be like, okay, so that one didn't say shit, and that one and that one. It takes people a while to open up.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think the most invasive first and the most fearful, which is the Yoni Pearls. Recently, I just got in as well, are the ion pads and the ion panty liners. The panty liners, we all know what we use panty liners for, but some people like to wear panty liners all the time. Our vaginas need to breathe, hence why I'm nudist and I like to walk around as nude, in the nude as much as possible.
Okay.
What the ion pads do versus the typical drugstore pads is they're cotton, they're organic, and the ion pads are activated by your body. So when we're wearing, as we all used to wear, our typical drugstore pads, we're known to have more infections because, you know, you're the athletic kid, or, you know, you're at work and you're in the office for 4 hours, 10 hours, nobody can relieve you, you can't go to the bathroom, whatever the case might be, and you're sitting there in your own bacteria otherwise.
Yeah.
That's where these friends come in to help decrease how much bacteria is growing, because we know bacteria grows rapidly in heat.
Yep.
The Yoni oils are pretty much moisturizing lubricants, self-explanatory.
Internally or external? External or internally?
I would suggest to use it more external. If you are going to use it internally, it's going to be used more as a lubricant for the male. Because you don't want to put too much oil within you. Again, water-based lubricants are better, and this is an oil-based lubricant.
Right.
Again, you do your research, you know what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Right. One more item. Let me see what you got.
Alrighty, girl. So the last two is the Yoni soaps.
Okay.
The crystal clear ones I put on hold for now because I want to try out for myself and I want my girls to try out the colored Yoni soap. So I have about 6 different ones coming. So this one is the Strawberry Passion, which is safe to use everywhere. Again, when we say to use soap, you're putting the soap on the outer lip of your labia. You're not putting it anywhere basically where your urethra starts and your vaginal hole opens. Nothing should be there but water. Best way to explain it. We have the tea tree soap, which we know tea tree for the yoni is amazing. And then we have the rose soap. Last and still, I want to say that is everything for now about the yoni. I honor you, Colette. I thank you for having me and listening to me ramble and chat for so long, and just giving me this opportunity to share with other women.
And thank you for being with me, Samantha. I really appreciate it. So this is the end of the Roaring 30s podcast, and we're talking about the vagina. If you have any questions, be sure to leave a comment below, and hopefully Samantha will be able to help you. Thank you for joining us for another segment, and take care.